Okay.
Let's hear it for you.
Oh. Is this on? No? Yeah, oh, I clicked it to mute. That's why you don't have.
There we go.
Oh, very cool.
Perfect.
Thank you. So as my slide says, hi. So before I get going, I'll just tell you just a few things about myself. I'm coming to you from Conway, Massachusetts, a small town in Western Mass. You know where Conway is? We have one person. Awesome. If you find yourself wanting, saying I'm kind of sick of public transportation, I'm sick of having multiple restaurants, come visit. But it's actually near Northampton, and there's a lot there, so it's a great place. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. So I'm a typeface designer, which means I make fonts, and so I run my own kind of font foundry, which is just my initials. If you can read that, it's DJR. So yeah, I make fonts, I license them, people use them on desktops and webs, ebooks, apps. I also work with a kind of a consortium of font developers called Type Network, and do some projects with them. I have a fun side I'm not actually from Massachusetts, I'm from Los Angeles, so I have a fun side project called Retroscript LA, where I take pictures of cursive signs in Los Angeles. It's actually my wife and I do this. And we have a Tumblr because I love Web 2.0. And the last thing I do is I run a thing called Font of the Month Club, and this is like a real club that you can join. I even have membership cards. This is the real deal. Actually, because today was the first of the month, I actually had to release a font today. That was stressful. I did it I was on the Peter Pan bus over here. I was clapping away. Yeah, so anyway, I am here to talk to you about the OpenType font format version 1.8. And since that doesn't sound very exciting, I can say I'm here to talk to you about variable fonts. Yeah, it's much more exciting that way. But yeah, I think it's important to point out, the first thing I want to point out is that this is the same font format that you have already been using if you use any sort of font made in the past 20 years. So this is not a new format, it's just a new feature in the latest version of the format. And so also, as a disclaimer, I am not really a CSS developer. I mean, I do write CSS for my own website and stuff, but you probably know a lot more than I do about CSS. So feel free to correct me if I say something really stupid. This slide is actually for me, because I want to be able to make sure I use the right lingo, because I can never remember that's called property. That's called, I don't know. I never get it right. Anyway, yeah, so variable fonts. Oh, I should also say, another thing I'm not is I'm not kind of an evangelist of this format. This format was introduced jointly by, let's see if I can get them all, Apple, Adobe, Microsoft, and Google. And so I don't work for any of those companies. I'm just a person who makes fonts who thinks this format's pretty cool and has a lot of potential. And I've kind of jumped on that wave a little bit early, and so that's why I'm here to talk to you about it. So the three things I kind of think are very interesting about variable fonts are kind of in brief, the efficiency, the tweakability, and the responsiveness. So when I say variable font, what I'm talking about is a font that is a single font file that can behave as if it were multiple fonts. So the idea is you can store multiple styles within a single font file. So for example, I have, well, let's just dive in. Efficiency. So, if you're loading a font, people have used maybe @fontface. Is this familiar to folks, hopefully? So this is, a way that you can, you're not stuck with only the fonts that are available on your user's computer. You can actually offer them fonts. Because if you're using fonts that are only on your user's computer, it's like traveling to a place and then only being allowed to wear the clothing that's in the closet of the room that you're staying in. It's like, why would you not just bring a suitcase with your own clothes? That's my little that's my little metaphor. So yeah, @fontface is that suitcase, right? You can say, here are my own fonts. You can, the page will load them, and then you can display them. And that's a good way to communicate your brand, express your style, stand out from the crowd, and do actual graphic design. And kind of the issue with suitcases is that they can get heavy. So when you have a kind of a more complex typographic layout like this, you might be loading a bunch of different fonts, even though they're from the same family, right? So all these fonts are from the same family. It's my font family called Gimlet. And so I have a headline font, an italic font, a bold font. And so that means instead of having one @font face call, you're actually loading a regular, a bold, a headline font, and then even an italic. And to digress for a second, please load your italics. Yeah, if you want to kind of get into the kind of stuff that I, as a type designer, care about. So if you can see the differences between these two slides, when you don't load the italic, it can get synthesized. And that makes for kind of like these ugly kind of curves, whereas mine are like, that's the best way I can explain them. Also, certain type styles, like italic is a whole separate tradition. It comes from a different form of calligraphy. So like in a lot of serif types, you'll see, I mean, like the bottom is just a slanted Roman, and the top, like that's an italic. It's pretty, it's different. It will stand out. It will actually emphasize your text like an italic is supposed to. So yeah. Anyway, digression over. In a complex type palette, this stuff can add up. And this is not a talk about font loading, but I will say it's important. This is kind of like the textbook example to sum up why font loading is important, because this is a headline from pretty recently. I think maybe you can start to see what's happening here. The italic font didn't load. And the message has changed. Font loading is important. It's important not to load too many fonts. What I'll say about a Roman, kind of loading multiple fonts, right, is that they're in two separate files. That's two calls to the server. That's two separate sets of outlines. That's two separate sets of spacing data. Two separate set of kerning data, which will adjust individual spacing pairs. And then also like the font metadata, like what's the font called, stuff like that. So if you're going to take away one thing from my talk tonight, it will be this. That's like my best CSS humor. If you use more than one variant of a typeface, a variable font may save you some points. Okay? For me, any new tech that is worthwhile kind of is rooted in some way in efficiency. It will do something better than the previous tech has done. And people have, I won't get into the history of this, but people have tried this kind of approach, having multiple variants in one font before, and it hasn't really taken off because there wasn't this immediate benefit. And so this is not what most of my talk is about, but I do want to make, like, this is like the takeaway. So why is it more efficient? So it's more efficient because if you have a typeface family, you can share data across the styles within it. So say I have this light font, right? And say I have a bold font, which would be two separate files. But if they're points, so if the points that describe the outline, I can actually relate them and store only one outline, and then just the differences between the light and the bold. It's just less data. So in this example, the differences, this path of differences creates an axis. This is a weight axis, right, going from light to bold. And once we have this axis, we can then just use, this is just math, to put, to plot points in the middle, right? It's no additional data stored. It's just, interpolation. It's just, and we can do things like go all the way from one axis, or one end of the axis to the other. Exactly, and they're impossible to name, and that's why we name them with numbers. You can have named instances, right? So I can say in this animation, like right there, like that's the medium right there. That's the So I can say in the font, right? Like here are some things that you should look at. But still, all the data in between is still there. It's all accessible. So how much do you actually save by using a variable font over static fonts? The short answer is it depends. The reason being that what you save depends on what you, like the styles that you want to use and how those relate to how the variable font is structured. So this is complicated, and people are, at least to my knowledge, only starting to kind of like test this and do comparisons. But I did a rundown using this font to begin with. So I'll just kind of present the results from this one test, not representative of all tests, but just so you know. Okay, so on the left side I have two static fonts, regular and bold. On the right side I have a variable font. It has one axis, which is weight, and it has two masters, so two ends of that axis, right? So one basic outline and then one set of deltas, or delta, the differences of the data. So the two fonts together, if I make them walk to subset a little bit, make them all pretty for the web, are 33K. Does anyone want to hazard a guess at what the variable font is? Those who said 33 are the closest. Although wait, is that what's Price is Right rules? Is it going, yeah. So okay, I don't know. But yeah. So okay, not a ton of savings, right? I would excuse you for not like falling off your chair in shock over this, right? But still, I mean, like that's 6%. It's not nothing, right? I don't know how much you're taking apart your pages trying to make them a little lighter, but it's something, right? So let's take this same example and kind of build up this type palette to more like what an editorial site might use, right? So you wouldn't only use a regular and a bold, you might put a medium in between them, right? So now we've added a third weight, so our load cases. The variable font, guesses?
31.
Thank you, you got it. It stays the same. My mic is still working. So now all of a sudden, we're dealing with 38% savings, right? So that's why it can vary so much. Depending on the structure of the font and the weights that you're using, you can save a ton or you can save a little. I'll show you a couple more examples just so we can see. So this is 3 styles. I'm going to show you 3 different styles. Okay, so now I have a display, a font made for headlines, and then the 2 text fonts from the first example. Now, in order to express this as a variable font, I now need to have 2 axes, right? I don't just have width happening, I also have size happening. So you can see in my variable font is a little bit more complicated. So I have weight, optical size, and 3 masters. I'm not going to have you guess for everyone. This is just, okay, so a few K, 11%. Okay, so better than the first one, right? Because now we're sharing metadata across 3 different fonts instead of 2. But not a ton. But then you get to adding more. You add display bold. We're now up to 16. And you add back the medium, 33. And you add back that text medium from our first example, 44%, right? So this is how savings happens. It's not that a variable font is inherently so much smaller, it's that you get a lot for free, right? So if once you set up that design space, so you can kind of see, here I'm gonna back up for a sec, you can kind of see in that variable font, there's kind of like a square there, right? You can see like a square of base. Now everything in that field, right? I've set up this space, and now I can access everything in that field with no additional vision. So yeah, so you can get a whole mess of fonts, calls to your server, down to theoretically 1. Depending on the design of your typeface, it may require multiple ones, or it may actually be strategically better to have multiple ones, depending on when you want to load stuff, for example, Romans and italics, right? I showed you earlier how sometimes, your upright font and your italic font, they can be kind of very closely related. One can just kind of look like a slightly the other. Sometimes it's a totally different design. It's almost like loading a separate typeface altogether. And so variations is not about font families. It's about variants, right? It's about taking the appearance, like one appearance, and changing it. But is that, I don't know if that's fair. But, oh, go ahead.
When you first introduced true and non-true, you switched to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Does this support that?
So here, I'm just going to go back to that slide because this is, sorry, that's a lot of slides. Okay. So this can support change, like, kind of hard changes. I'll show you an example later. Whether it's actually a good idea to do this or not, I don't know. It may be better just to look, especially because you might not be using italics for every single time you're using a Roman. It might make sense to load a variable font from a Roman where you're using a lot. And if you're only using 1 or 2 italic styles, you can have a smaller variable font, less of a footprint, right? Less of a design space. Or just load up single italics. So yes, it's possible to have that kind of swapping. But I mean, what essentially you have to do then is you have to include all of the italic glyphs in the Roman font. And that will make the Roman font heavier. So the answer is it will depend on the design. In a design like this, where nothing really changes structurally, it's just a question of making the curves prettier. That, because the point structures don't change, there's no, you can put it in a single font, no big deal. Here, where the structure is so different, it might be better to do a separate font. What happens in between, I honestly don't know. Kind of have to test it. Moving forward in the future, all this stuff. Sorry, everyone. All these numbers, numbers. So yeah. But yeah, this is actually this is something that a lot of people gloss over when thinking about variable fonts because it's kind of confusing and nebulous. And I didn't want to say it, but yeah, I really don't. So implementation. So this format was introduced a year and change ago. And just now, it's actually the timing of this talk is pretty fortuitous because in the last month, there's been a ton of stuff happening. Adobe apps like Photoshop now come with these nifty little sliders where you can see a variable font and you can slide across those axes, and then you can also access a single font as multiple items in a font. In CSS, there's a new property, I get it, success, called font variation settings, where you can say every axis has a 4-letter tag. So you can specify that tag and specify the numeric value of where you want to what you want to see along that axis, and boom, you've accessed variations. Oh, sorry. Oh, yes. Yeah, both. Okay. If not everyone heard, yes, if the range is defined, the numeric range, if it's per font based or if it's kind of a universal thing. And so I'll just go to the next slide and show you now I have 2 axes. I'm going to answer your question in 2 seconds. So I have, and so you can see this is how I show 2 axes, just comma, the next axis. You can see that one is uppercase, one is all lowercase. That's because the first one, A, B, C, D, is an unregistered axis. I just made it up, right? And so that can be per font. It can be whatever I can say 0 to 10. I can say 0 to 1,000. I can say negative 1,000 to positive 1,000. For weight, that's WGHT. That's a registered axis. So that means that this is trying to be standardized, right? So now this is using the kind of you would say font weight, 100 to 900. So 400 is regular. CSS font weight, right? 400 regular, 700 bold. So that's on that scale. And so certain axes are pegged to a pre-existing scale, others aren't. Does that answer the question, Lawrence? What? Kind of. You want to follow up?
Okay, so I see in here that the WGHT goes to 0.3 or 3.5, which is really weird.
Yes.
I mean, we're familiar with this 100.
Yes.
Some fonts seem to use that accent.
Now?
Go for it.
So Steel was not actually released technically as a variable font. So yeah, so it's kind of a cheat, but that was one of the first ones that you could play with in the browser. In the W3C spec, they're trying to define numeric ranges for the registered axes, which are width, weight, slant.
No, I know. Go for it. Do it.
And so those won't have predefined minimum and maximum values, but it's still up to the type designer to decide what they're allowing in that specific font.
Right.
So they may not all support all things.
Yeah. So for example, with weight, you know, I don't want to draw a super thin version and a super black version of every one of my typefaces. Maybe that doesn't make sense for that design. But I have those numbers are anchored so that I can use to guide myself, and that way people can know what they expect when they type in a number. So yeah, these are the register axes, and the thing. So you can access these axes through font variation settings property, but on a higher level, these axes can also be influenced by things like by your normal CSS properties: font weight, font size, font stretch if it worked everywhere. Yeah, so that means that not only can you have like for font, oh go ahead.
Finish up.
I was saying, so not only can you have like a number like 400, like because normally in font weight you can have 400, 500. Now you can have 372. You can actually specify to whatever degree of precision that you almost want what value you see. Go ahead.
So you were showing sort of the format before. You showed an original and a master, each end of the spectrum on a dimension, then you showed another master on the other dimension.
Yes.
And if this is getting too close to math, let me know, but it seems sort of strange that if you have two different masters that represent two different ends of two different dimensions, how do you exercise both dimensions at once?
That's into the math. I mean, essentially, I think it's just a question of interpolation. So say you have, sorry, I'm like trying to think of the best way to answer this. It works, especially if you have that whole square. You can say, I'm going to find, so I wish I had a blackboard. So say I have a square, right? I'm going to find the top, middle, and the bottom middle of the square. Now I'm going to find the middle of those two middles. And then I mean, you can have more than two axes. You can have 30 axes, and then the math gets really weird. And so, I mean, like if you have covered those axes with all the masters, things will start to break down. And go ahead.
Does it change how you approach the design of the font?
Yes. So I'll cover that in a bit. Let me know if I don't cover it to your satisfaction. We can talk about it again. Cool. All right. And so now we can have font weight 372, right? Or font weight 801. You can specify whatever font weight you want. Another question: does this actually work somewhere? In the past month, yes. Before that, I would have said in the developer version, or something like that. But Jason, right here up front, it is now on Can I Use. This happened this week. It got on Can I Use. I mean, so like this is like stuff. And yeah, so it's now in Chrome and Safari on High Sierra or iOS 11. The developer version of Firefox has it. I don't know the tense for that. It will have it, right? It will, right? Because that version isn't there. Yeah, I don't know. Opera. It's in development for Edge, for Microsoft Edge. So this is actually something that you can begin to use. It's obviously not covered everywhere. I mean, you see that 2% on top. Once it's around for more than, like the latest version of Chrome was around for more than 2 weeks, that number is just going to go up. This is actually an implemented technology. Go ahead.
You can also sort of scope it inside and have supports
Dude,
clause?
he's a second.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just
No,
gonna be quiet.
no, seriously, no. Yeah, so what Jason said, you can say now, right? I have, if the browser supports variable fonts, use the variable font. If my browser doesn't support variable fonts, I can load the same fonts that I've always been using, right? And then I can use the same font weight, font whatever, to call them. And it doesn't matter because either way, you get that coverage. So this is, if you want to try to experiment with this today, this is the way to do it.
A lot of variable fonts have the bold and regular also, so you can load those.
So you say a lot of variable fonts, like a lot of them exist already, which is not the case. But theoretically, I mean, the way that I, as a foundry, have provided and will continue to provide variable fonts is to also offer a static version. I mean, I can't cover everything, right? Because there are a gajillion midpoints between N and accents. But I will give kind of your regular medium bold for weight, or your normal condensed compressed for width, that sort of thing. So theoretically, you could have this synchronicity, and I, as a font developer, would try to give you the tools to do that.
Will it extrapolate beyond the range of the masters?
A variable font will not. What? It will. It's not. Oh, so yeah, I don't know if you can hear. So it might, but it's not supposed to. Is I think the answer from the front row there. I don't think it's supposed to. But I mean, it's totally mathematically possible, right? And I mean, I use extrapolation. I'll show you in 2 slides. I use extrapolation in my own work. Anyway, so yeah, we have this cool format. You can morph letters. You can make them do things, right? But like, what does this actually mean for like how we use fonts on the web? Oops, that was that slide. I'm trying here. So to me, variable fonts kind of represent a different kind of efficiency rather than just file size efficiency, right? Because this is to make the relationship between the font maker and the font user kind of more efficient, right? Because I kind of see us as partners in typography, right? We're kind of together managing the space to show the content, and we're deciding together like where the black is going to go, where the white's going to go, and to serve our readers, right? I kind of do it on a micro level, like everything within like the vertical M, right? So I have a list. I'm drawing the letter shapes. I'm managing like the spacing between the letters and the kerning between them. I'm defining the weight, how heavy the letter is, and also how wide it is, how the X height, like the lowercase is, right? That's kind of like my job as the font maker. The font user, on the other hand, is kind of saying, okay, here's what size it's going to be at. Here's the line spacing. Here's the column width, to the extent that we can define that. And here are the margins, right? So I mean, together we have like there's a division of labor, but together we're kind of putting typography together. Too many times I said together. Together we make typography. All right. So with variable fonts though, this line is like blurred, right? Oh, blurred. Yeah. So like now you have a say in things like how the shape of the letter looks and what weight it is. And at the same time, I can give you recommendations through those registered axes of like, hey, this is how I think this font should look at 12 point. But maybe at 24 point, I think it should look different, right? So there's a lot more back and forth happening there. And that's kind of nice because, I set, with every font, or not every font, most fonts that I make, I send out a PDF user manual, or at least a specimen with that font. And like 0 people have used it, right? Like, because like nobody RTFMs for the font, right? You just don't do that. So this is a way for me to communicate inside the software how I think things should look. And you can feel free to listen to that or not listen to that, but at least I have the opportunity to kind of like have my say. So for me, that's cool. For you, you get to tweak things, right? And so, oh, sorry, I'm gonna back up for a sec. So I've been thinking about font families as a design space for a while. This is how most people who make fonts today make fonts, right? So, I'm thinking about, how this design will transform across these axes. I even think about breakpoints in my design. So this is what you were asking about earlier, right? Where sort of breakpoints where we can actually take the bar that goes through the dollar, and when the font gets too bold or too narrow and there's just not enough room for that bar, we can make it go away, right? So I can kind of define this in my font. I have actually, or we have type designers have software. This is a superculator by Eric von Blockman. So if you watch, I might extrapolate a little bit. Here you can extrapolate. So I can actually use this to generate my fonts. So it's not to the very end of my process that I'm spitting out a long list of fonts for you to buy, right? So my process is very much in line with how variable fonts are. It's just you haven't had a chance to see that process at all. And now you do. So variable fonts are really kind of a pure expression of the things that I'm already making. Of course, it's still worth it to make them. It's not like I can just like click a button and boom, variable font. It's actually kind of a big pain in the butt, which is why there aren't so many yet. But that, give it time. That'll change. What am I doing at time? Okay. Okay. So yeah, so I'm like 1/3 away from the top. Oh god. So number one was efficiency. Number two is tweakability. So I kind of touched on this a bit, but let me just kind of give you a case study of one of my own fonts. I made this font called Input. It's a font for programmers about coding. It's free for people using the code, so please go download it. But I kind of thought that like I could make like one font to rule them all. And that was like a little bit hubristic because what I kind of learned through that process is that like people code in different ways. They have different preferences. They have different, they're using different size screens and different, everyone's different. Everyone deserves their own code. So I tried to, all I can do as a type designer is give them options, right? So I was like, okay, so if someone's coding like kind of a mathematical thing with not so many lines, they might want to see something like this. If they're looking at a terminal all day, they might want to see something, that kind of handles that crowding a bit better, tighter spacing, a little bit compressed letter forms, widthwise. If you're doing multiple columns, you might want it, with more line spacing and less letter width. If you're doing it in multiple rows, you might want to have the opposite. If you code on a white background or a black background, you might actually use a different weight, and, depending on whatever's comfortable. Also depends on your operating system. The rendering engine will actually display the letters differently depending on what computer you're using. Are you doing it in a brightly lit room? Are you doing it in a cold little closet? It's like these things. So here you can see I'm actually using different weights of my font to approximate the same overall, gray. Like if you kind of spin your eyes and see like the gray, like that overall appearance. Does that make sense? Because of the glow of the letters against the black background. Will kind of hate it. So I made this like massive, ridiculous font. It has sans, serif, and monospace versions. It comes in 7 weights, comes in 4 widths, and italics. This is it's 168 fonts. It's it's ridiculous to expect like someone to use these fonts, right? Because it's like it's about flexibility. I don't expect anyone to use more than 4 of them, right? But I wanted to give the options of 168. So what I didn't realize is I was kind of creating a proto-variable. This was a few years ago. So I mean, on the input website, you can still see this. You can have these sliders, and you can see it's you're stuck to the instances, right? Like it's not fluid like the variable fonts I was showing you, but it's the same concept, right? You can manipulate all these things. You can select the alternate letters you want, because like some people like a /0, some people like a dotted 0, some people like nothing in their 0. I tried to cover it all. The curly, they're all spelled curly braces because my curly braces were very controversial. So I added those in version 2. If you want later, I can show you tweets of mean things people said about my curly braces. Like the words horror and shit were used in some of them. Anyway, that's curly braces. But yeah, so the idea is that you can have fonts that are tweakable, and variable fonts offer this right native in the format, right? No 168 family, style families. It's just there for the taking almost. Here's another example of kind of a stylistic thing that you can tweak. This is not by me, this is by designer CJ Dunn. This is Dunbar. This was the first commercially released variable font that I know. So it goes from kind of like 1970s, like huge X height to like 1920s modernist geometric small X height. If those associations mean anything to you. But it's kind of cool to see, like, rather than having weight or width or something that we're familiar with, this is now, it's now like a lowercase that changes, independently of the caps. Here's one of my fonts of the month. This is from October. It changes contrast. So the thick, thin, so you can see like the tops and the bottom of the letters actually don't change. It's just those vertical stems that change. So you have a different thick, thin contrast, which gives it a pretty different feel. My colleague and mentor, David Burlow from Font Bureau, also Master, made Decobar, which is like totally experimenting with this format and taking it to the extreme, including all of these styles in a single font. So I mean, this is, and he did this in partnership with Google Fonts. And so the idea is because they want people to start experimenting with this format. This is like the best experimental font there is. And so this is a piece of software called FontView, which is open source. You can download it. The font's open source too. And you can play around with all these different terminals, either alone, or if I were smart enough, I would have made that video a little bit faster. But you can assume that when you start to combine them, we should wait for it. It's just, this is what happens when I'm screen grabbing myself. I take too long. So you can see, like, this font does a lot of bizarre things. And I did like the production for this, so I actually got to name all of the things. So like you just saw the worm. Oh my god, am I not even going to do the combinations? Oh, I can show you that after. So he also did a text kind of variant of this, right? Where you can kind of break down a text font into its independent components. Like this is just the lowercase height. This is just the serif shape and serif height. I'm going to play it again so you can see. This is the horizontal contrast. That is the width. You can manipulate all these things independently, and you can use them in combination to create tons of variations. Again, this is experimental, and I'm not saying go use this in all your text right at this moment, but I mean that's kind of interesting potential to use this variable fonts to like create parametric design, where you can manipulate every single parameter separately. Last category, and I have two little anecdotes, and then maybe I think we can do more questions or I can try. So I'm gonna talk about responsiveness. So I've been talking about tweakability, right? So this is you, the designer, making adjustments, right? Figuring out like the best way for this specific purpose or whatever. Responsiveness is the idea is that like the font can look at its surroundings and say, oh, I should change because my surroundings have changed, right? So just as how you create responsive layouts, I hope, sorry, you're creating layouts that will be different on a watch versus a phone versus a laptop versus a desktop, right? Why would the letters not change with those? So this is an opportunity for you to do that. So I'm going to give you two quick little anecdotes. First is about font size, or the four-letter tag's optical size in a variation axis. So this is kind of something that we lost in history. When we moved to digital fonts, we have, rather than having a font designed for every specific size, we just have one scalable outline, right? And in metal, each size had its own design parameters that were kind of fine-tuned for that size. So it's hard to see, you can kind of see it, right? At 5 point, the font is much wider, it's much more loosely spaced. It's kind of ruggedized, right? It's here, this is maybe a better slide to see. So this is the same A at different point sizes, but scales, you can see the difference, right? This is for showing the pretty fancy features. You get like the delicate, the thins, you get like that nicely shaped ball terminal. Over at the other end, it's just like, you just gotta show the letter. And like, it's like, everything else is secondary. And then there's a whole range in between. So variable fonts, of course, give us the opportunity to reintroduce that kind of stuff right into the font. An example, again, a pre-variable fonts example, is I was reviving this font for the fashion magazine. This is an Italian typeface called Forma. And it was done in metal. And one of the things we really loved about it was, so A, it's got like pretty tight spacing. And it was done in the 60s. And that was kind of in vogue there to have like, kind of crush all the letters together. Late 60s, I should say. The other thing is it kind of had that like ink on paper, like if you see like, I'm just saying like, if there's a little taper, right? It's not a totally straight line, right? It's like you can feel that, you know, like that metal hitting that paper, right? And in this way, I mean, otherwise it's kind of similar to America, but it has that physical, a little bit retro feel that we really try to capture. The problem with that is that it's super sensitive to size, right? If I draw a taper, you know, for 6 point, it's going to be very different than the taper I want to draw for 72 point. So I drew, this is for a fashion magazine. So we actually had a user. And we're like, so we're going to give them 5 different optical sizes, so 5 sets of fonts, right? So you can see, not a whole lot changes design-wise, right? But the spacing changes. It's hard to see here, but you can see this is much more tapered. Sorry, it's not the best slide for that. But and then on the right, you can see how they're supposed to be used at their actual size. The problem is that when you're selecting from a font menu, nobody wants to think about choosing the right font, right? You just want to design your design and get it out of there. So we created this little InDesign script, which I like to call the font police, which would actually go through your file and say like, hey, this text is in format deck, but actually looking at the size, it should be in format display. And then it's like, do you want to change? Do you want to make that change, or do you want to skip? And then it would do that for every single instance of the font of the document. The client, I think, found it super annoying and never used it, but that principle is there, right? And now that principle can be automatic, right? So if I say font size, you know, less than an M, or if I say font size 4M, if my font has an optical size axis, it will just show the right version of the font. Like, you don't have to think about it as a designer, it just happens. The font just responds to the environment. You can see, so this is like a little demo showing a browser that supports variable fonts versus a browser that doesn't support variable fonts. Also, very important, browsers that don't support variable fonts, you just see the default version, right? So like the font still loads, the font is still there, you just don't see the variations. So it's not like you won't see the text. It's just you won't see it in the bold, condensed, italic, number 4 setting. So you can see here, in the supported version, the line, as you go up, the letter spacing, especially the proportions, feel a bit more comfortable for text. You can look at the line length to see that difference. It's subtle, right? This is subtle stuff, but it's there, and it's cool that it happens without you having it. My last example, and then I can wrap up, is width. Width is super interesting because a lot of the responsive stuff that you do online happens across width, right? From pages that are this wide, pages that are that. Again, synthesis, or in this case, using a transform to make something narrower, it distorts the shapes. But you can see now, all of a sudden, the horizontal parts will fit, and the vertical parts got fit all of a sudden because that's sort of only that direction. Versus here's a condense that I actually drew. See the difference? This is why, for those of you who want to design school and design background, your teacher maybe told you or should have told you not to like, drag, just like squash your fonts together to make stuff fit. Anyway, so I think that like the idea of fitting is really cool. And like if you have a variable font, then you can theoretically have a font that fits anything, right? No matter what text is in. So I was like, I'm going to make a font that like just fills space. I called it fit. This is it. So enjoy that. So it says fit is designed to fit just about any text into just about any space. And you can see that each line is actually a slightly different width, right? The letters are slightly different from line to line. And if you want to get super meta, I'm giving a presentation right now. If I were giving the same presentation on a different aspect ratio, the font will fit to my slides. It's pretty awesome. Sorry, that's me patting myself on the back. Good job, dude. Anyway, so yeah, you can have a short word like this, or regardless of the word, stuff just takes up the same width, right? And you can see that the even the accents fit, right? Because you gotta stick with the theme. But the white space, the shapes in between the letters always stay the same, right? So you're getting this. So you can see as I go back and forward, the white shapes stay the same. Yeah, and it goes pretty dang narrow, all the way down to that. So yeah. So yeah, that's a lot of different widths, right? It goes from super narrow to super wide. So all of these A's fit into this one little font. And that is something that's never been possible before. And so what I could do with this one font is I could make, this is on my website, I could have, regardless of text, and not changing the font size, right? Because they're like the JavaScripts that will like fit, what's it called? The one, fit.js?
Fit text.
Fit-text.js, thank you, sorry. Will change the size to fit your div. This can fit your div without changing the size. So everything is the same. Sorry. This will fit. So I have 2 dogs, so I'm like super dog smelly right now. So this is we're cool with that. Yeah. Anyway, so this will fit 3 times. So yeah, and then what you can do, because it's a variable font, is now you can do that squashing, but instead of distorting, it actually goes along that axis. There's just a bit of JavaScript that my colleague Chris Lewis wrote that just says, if the div changes, look, calculate the right axis value and stick that into the CSS. So yeah, that's how fit works. Of course, because variable fonts aren't widely supported, and I really wanted to release this font, I needed to have a fallback, right? I needed to have a non-variable fonts version. So this is where I generated 1,000 static fonts. And then if you go to my website and your browser doesn't support variable fonts, the JavaScript will actually go to the server, call whatever font. So you see like a little wall of font loads, but it still does that same draggy thing. So yeah, 1,000 fonts. Took a lot of time. I pretty much couldn't use my computer for over 24 hours. But this presents us with maybe the most ridiculous and most extreme file size efficiency comparison, right? So we have a font with 1 axis, and this one has 3 masters, right? So there's 1 in the middle, 1 on either side. I need to do that for design reasons. And we have 20 megs of 1,000, it's actually 1,001, because I did 0 and I did 1,000. 1,001 WAF files is 20 megs. Variable font guesses? 75? 125. What?
140.
140. Okay, you ready for it? $1, perfect. Okay, yeah, right? I'm right there with you. Yeah, so I mean, obviously this isn't fair because you're never going to actually load 1,000 fonts in a design, right? But what? Well, I mean, I did it, but I don't recommend it. Yeah, so that's fit. Also, the font looks way epic if you put images in the background. So I released this font commercially in January. You can actually go out and buy this if you so desire. And universal acclaim. Yeah, but this is the rest of the comment. This is what I meant, right? Because this person, in their own special way, understood that this was an experiment, right? This is taking a new format and trying to do something intense with it, right? But this same principle of varying across width, you can use in super practical settings. This is my font Gimlet again. So now we have different versions of the font loading different variations loading depending on the device, right? So on a narrower width, we can use a narrower font and shoot in maybe another word, a word and a half per line, just to make things a little more comfortable, so you don't have that wild rag you get on phones when you're doing big text, right? We can kind of take that and minimize it a little bit, right? Because we can have a text font with multiple widths. Way more subtle, right? Way toned down, but similar concept. And then we can just use a media query like this and say, hey, for this, what's the div width? Sure. Use this axis, or sorry, this value on the axis. And yeah, so here's just, everyone's got to do a browser drag. And I always envision that I would say something brilliant while this happens. Then I end up just watching it with all of you. So yeah, so could you see it? I'm gonna, oh God, am I gonna back it? Okay. So see it? Right? So this is responsive text. Things can get even more interesting depending on how kind of far out into the future you want to look. Think about headlines. So I'm doing this manually, but think about an algorithm that could take a headline that kind of looks weird on 3 lines and put it on 2 lines. Super subtle, but it can make your sites look that much better. Or take text. Say I have a pretty uneven rag. I can have an algorithm that goes through and kind of says, okay, make that just like a little nicer, right? Or for justified text. If, this is justified text without hyphenation. I know CSS hyphenation is a thing, but I'm not going to get into that. But I can kind of tweak this text to kind of make it feel a bit more even, right? So the word spaces aren't so big. I can add width so that it shrinks the word spaces. Does that make sense? This is super subtle, right? But and again, I'm not saying that this is like a practical thing to do. I'm just saying it's possible. Yeah, so you can have all this stuff happen, and it's kind of exciting. Wrapping up, this is something to keep an eye out for, right? I'm not, don't use it for your, corporate grade thing tonight, right? Maybe, unless your boss is like super, kind of progressive and into this kind of stuff. But it's like, this is coming, and it's coming faster than I thought it would. I mean, when I scheduled this talk, I did not think I would be saying that it was actually supported in publicly released browsers or in apps like Photoshop and Illustrator. So it's coming. Some resources for you to keep track or for you to learn more. There's this great Medium article. I don't know if you maybe post these in the YouTube for the comments or something. Happy to send these links. This is by John Hudson, who's on the committee, who helped put this format together. There's this great site called Access Praxis by Lawrence Penny, where you can actually live test. He's doing a pretty good job keeping track of all the variable fonts that are out there. There are a few by me in there, but also by other people who are playing with this. And you can see on the right, there are all these sliders and widgets, so you can actually play around with variable fonts live with your browser supports. There is a Twitter account at variable fonts. This is not official, like this is not run by any of the companies, but it's it's run by Nick Sherman, who's a type designer and typographer, and so he tries to. He doesn't do it super often, but he'll post updates so you can kind of keep tabs. So if you want to kind of passively follow something, that would be a thing to follow. Yeah, so I think that there are dangers to this format, right? That it can turn into this like slider hell, right? Where you're like trying out like in this massive space, like I just want to find the medium. There are named instances you can always find medium. That's just an example, but like, and this can get confusing, right? It also presents you with like tons of options, and you might not be able to always see the differences between them, right? So I mean, but I think this is kind of where it's fun to be on the kind of like trying to use the technology early, is because you can figure this stuff out. You can be ahead of the curve, influence how people see these fonts, how people use these fonts, how people let these fonts affect their, like the way that they design. Because this can either be just a file size savings thing, or it can be kind of like a cool definition of how we use font families. And so that choice is kind of still being made. What's super exciting to me is it's happening simultaneously to some other exciting developments in web typography. Fonts are very exciting, including where you can put SVGs to map around the font and then type with it. Also, CSS Grid, wide implementation. And this is like real graphic design on the web. Like, there was a CSS Grid talk at this meetup like a year ago, right before it was like super out there. But yeah, this is a demo by Jen Simmons, who's been doing a lot of great speaking, and I did a workshop with her on CSS grading. They kind of blew my mind. So we have these technologies all kind of coming into their own at the same time, which kind of is very exciting because now, like, web design can be closer and maybe even surpass web design or any other kind of design, like, because these limitations are being broken down. The file size limitation, the how many fonts do you load limitation, you know, the ability to do multiple columns and still have it be responsive limitation. Yeah, so I hope that, you know, please keep track of this format. And yeah, hopefully it'll help you use more type better. Thank you. Go. Say thanks. Thank you. So I have no idea what time it is or how long I went. But if you want questions, don't want to hold you captive for too long. I'm drinking a beer now.
How hard is it to auto-generate
No. I wish.
Do you have a ballpark sense of how labor intensive what it's going to cost to do it?
It depends. Some fonts were kind of designed, or like so, like the font I was showing you earlier, where I'm using Superpolator, right? I'm doing it. I'm already working in a design space. That would be a family that's more ready to make the jump to variable fonts. It's in my experience, even though I've designed a lot of fonts that way, it still takes a bunch of time and tweaks and fixes because interpolation in my apps and interpolation, like the standards, are more strict with the actual variable font. Like more things have to line up. So yeah, cost is a good question, and this is something I didn't really address. But yeah, we're still, I mean, like we on the font industry and are still figuring out like, wow, how much did this cost? The way I priced Fit, the font that you saw, that made your eyes bleed, that I just said, if you buy the whole family, you get the variable font. So that to me seemed like a very logical starting point. Of course, it can get interesting because if you buy a part of the family, theoretically, I would love for you to get that same part in variable font, right? So if you don't need widths, right, but you do need weights, you could get a variable font that just has the weights, right? It's not an all or nothing thing. It's not the entire family or a single style. And so that's kind of an interesting space that we haven't fully explored yet.
Could you also subset in your software so you could like to have access?
That would be great. I would like to have that developed for me because I don't know how to do it myself. Yes, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that needs to happen. So Font Tools is an open source font manipulation. Like that's how you subset character sets very, very easily. Like, if you say, if you buy a font with Cyrillic, but you don't need the Cyrillic, you don't have to load it. So theoretically, that could do something like that. At least to my knowledge, it doesn't right now. But that's the ideal case. Of course, it's a little complicated because, like, say you buy, I mean, like, normally when people are buying a part of a big typeface, you're not buying, like, a contiguous range. You're buying, like, hey, I want the white, and I want the black, but you're not buying everything in between. So now, do you get all that stuff for free, or do you have to pay for it anyway? Like, are you not able to buy, like, kind of piecemeal fonts anymore? Like, that's a kind of a challenge, but it's a kind of an interesting one. For me, because I'm very interested in font licensing. I wrote my own license, trying to make it pretty permissive. Yeah, did that cover both of your needs more or less? I can jump to him later.
Tool sets. So we saw some of the tools that you use in the explanation, and on top of that, you already mentioned one open source tool. You mentioned one,
For making the fonts or for using the fonts?
For making fonts.
For making the fonts. Okay.
Especially variable.
Okay. So the software I use is called to actually do the drawing. It's called RoboFont. It uses a format called UFO, Unified Font Object, and that's an open source format. And so other apps use that same format. Like I have a program now, especially for current, called Metrics Machine. And that uses the same format. So I can jump from app to app and keep my file the same. There are also, maybe one of the more accessible font editors is called Glyphs. And there's Glyphs has a mini version, so you can actually, for I think it's like $100, you can have like a, it's kind of like Photoshop elements of font editors. And it's like a little bit pared down, but like totally enough for you to get started. Robofont doesn't have a mini version to my knowledge. It's really, you want to invest, if you're going to invest in making fonts, I like Robofont, but Glyphs is it provides an easier starting path. There's also an open source font editor called FontForge. I don't use it. I drop the cash.
If you have like kerning between different letter pairs, does that interpolate between two different masters of the different?
Yes. So this is actually one of the things that makes, in a conventional font, the kerning sets can change from font to font. In a variable font, they need to all be consistent so that they can interpret, right? So if I have a big kern over on this side, right, a little kern over on this side, I need to make sure in the middle I get that medium kern. So one of the production things I do when I turn static fonts into a variable font is I add a bunch of zero value kerning pairs because they're necessary. And that adds file size, but
Can I have a follow-on question specifically on the term?
sure.
So that's if I can make the variations of the but I saw a sample where it started off at the beginning of the road, very like dense thing. So it didn't, but then it didn't turn because effectively each one of those is a separate instance. You can't give the pairs between fonts.
Yeah, I don't think the format, or at least the implementations of the format, allow for kerning across instances. I mean, theoretically, if you're using the same font and you have two instances next to each other, you could find the kerning value in the middle of those two instances. That gets tricky though, because across instances, I showed you like that breakpoint slide, things can also break. So something that's in the middle might not actually apply to what you're actually seeing. So I don't know where that happens in the stack. Like if the kerning is calculated first or the substitution happens first, I don't happen to know that. But it could be possible, but yeah, right now, I mean, kerning between, it's just like if you have two fonts in the same word, you don't see any kerning between those two fonts. Kerning exists within the font. I lost track of who it is. Yes.
Is interpolation only linear?
That is too much of a math question for me.
Okay.
So here's another open source library that you should check out. It's called Mutator Math. It's done by Aaron von Lachlan, the guy who did that Superblader app I showed. And then it was released along with the support of Adobe. So it's now out there and anyone can look at the math. I don't know how it works to you.
Well, from what I understand, it's linear between the points that are defined. So if you start with only like an extra light and an extra heavy, it's going to interpolate in a straight line in between. But you're with the notion of those named instances that David was mentioning, you can define what the points are in between, so you can effectively make a curve by defining how you want it to vary across that design space. So that's the simulation of that. That's possible.
Hey, are masters tied to API, or is that just whatever?
So fonts actually have their own internal set of units. So for example, I usually draw on a 1,000-unit M, meaning that within, when you specify one M, right, you're going from like the top of the font space to the bottom. So above the top of the lowercase descenders to below the bottom of the lowercase descenders. And that I'm using usually 1,000 units. And so that's kind of an abstract unit. It doesn't have any relationship, or it's not tied to a specific like number of pixels or number of, just because fonts are scalable, they can be used in a ton of sizes. There are these things called hints, which can exist within a font. And they can essentially provide the rendering engine hints on how to rasterize it at any given size. Hints and variable fonts are a whole topic because generally speaking, you would hint one font at a time, right? So, okay, quick demo. Okay, so say I have a lowercase e, right? It's going to be maybe too much work to load one. And you know what? I'm gonna. Oh wait, but you can't see that. Hang on a sec. This is going to be. Actually, no. I'm not going to visualize it. I'm just going to. Okay, ready? So I have a lowercase e. Okay, it's now 5 pixels tall, right? So I have a black pixel up top, right? I have a white pixel where that enclosed form is. I have a black pixel for the crossbar, right? I have a white pixel for the open part. Then I have a black pixel, right? So black, white, black. What happens when I rasterize that same glyph at 6 pixels high, right? That crossbar, either we're going to put it right in the middle and make it gray, right? So we get a blurred crossbar, or we have it go up, or we have it go down, right? So it's like floating hands up, floating hands down, and that's what hinting can help decide. So yes, you can have some degree of control over. Is this even related to your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm worried about like aliasing at like a cheap display.
Okay. Yeah. So funny thing about hinting is that Mac OS pretty much doesn't use it. So yeah, Mac OS is like, I'm just gonna like blow the shit out of everything. And it's all gonna look great. And we're gonna have, and then the traditional Windows approach is like, we're gonna make everything like super sharp, and we're gonna have all these instructions that help us do that. So what ends up happening, traditionally speaking, they're kind of moving closer together, but simplifying things. Mac is like, I'm gonna make every font, I'm gonna impose my will on every font and make it look at my level of good, which is like slightly blurry. And Windows is like, if your fonts have all this good data in it, we're going to make it super sharp. And if your fonts don't have this good data in it, it's going to look really bad. So that's why at the beginning of using red fonts, a lot of you maybe were concerned about font rendering on Windows and like using like whatever font you get off of Google Fonts or Dafont or whatever, and then it like, oh wait, that looks really bad in certain sizes, and other sizes it was fine. That's because of their lack or the not good quality of variable fonts can have hinting, but the hinting is universal, right? It applies to all the variations. So that limits what you can do. I think, did that not kill it? Okay.
As a type designer, how do you feel about like someone using the typeface that you design somewhere between like a display and like a frame? Do you care? Are you like excited about it?
If ideally, people use things in the range that I designed them for. So if I designed, if in the design space that I envisioned, I have a display version, I have a text version. Yeah, using something in the middle of that, that's awesome. And that's something that like, if I had infinite, time, and if the things that distribute fonts, if you didn't have to just download each one at a time or whatever, it's like I would have totally offered it midpoints. I mean, it's like in that sans serif, like I had the micro and I had the banner, and I had display, deck, and text in between them because I had a custom client where I could say like, I'm going to give you that level of granularity. Normally, you just say, here's display, here's text, because of the toothpaste issue, you can't offer people too many choices. So I feel very good about it. Of course, if I didn't design a font for that purpose, maybe like that. If you take that fit font and you use it for text, it's going to look really bad. So it's like, that's not ideal. But I mean, theoretically, I can put an optimal size axis on fit, and that white space would get bigger and bigger, and smaller it gets. And that would be cool, but also it's more.
Yeah, I was more just wondering, like, headline type is like super precious, like the perfect display typeface that you design is like really precious to you, or like,
Yeah, and see, that's actually a really interesting question. Because this is like, this kind of variable fonts for the type designer represents kind of like a letting go, right? Where I'm no longer able to touch every single outline that we use. For some designs, that can be fine. For other designs, especially designs that like, might have like a handmade feel or that revive like a metal type, because like, if you look back at like metal fonts, they do tons of interesting things because they were kind of each single one in metal, right? So the regular and the bold might be doing totally different whacked out things, which is unusual, but also kind of like very visually interesting. And variable fonts have the potential to kind of steamroll, right? You know, and which can kind of sanitize designs in a way that like I wouldn't want to see happen. I mean, you can't have alternate characters, and you can't have those swap in. So, like, you know, if you're getting, you know, like I showed with the breakpoint, you know, you can have, you know, different variations swap in, but in one you do that, the less file size savings. So there is this kind of tension now between super efficiency and just like flat, generic-ish design.
Ligatures and all that.
Yeah, I mean, so this is an OpenType font. So have you ever used font feature settings? So it's kind of very similar to font variation settings, but yes, because it's an OpenType font, it has all the other stuff that your OpenType font would have, including, you know, like the glyph substitution, ligatures, the contextual alternates. So, like, you know, if you have like a handwriting-ish font and they've included multiple word like versions of letter G, if you check the word eggs, like those two G's won't be identical, killing the illusion of handwriting. Like you can make them different. All that stuff is okay. Glyph substitution still in the font, just like the
So you touched on color fonts and you kind of went right by me. Is that something that's encapsulated in variable fonts?
No.
It's totally separate.
Yeah, sorry, totally separate. You can have a variable color font. I did an experiment with this color fonts enthusiast in the Netherlands, where we made a variable poop emoji. Actually, do I have internet? Can I show it? Oh no, but I don't think I have the right browser. So this is not widely supported. Okay, hang on one sec. Okay, you're not going to see it in its full glory, and if Roll ever watches this, Roll, I'm so sorry. Okay, Pixel. Now it's like, can I see? It's in my history. Oh yeah, I got it loaded over here. So you're not seeing the color version. Okay. Okay, so that's a variable cap height. Get it? Cap. Yeah. It's so funny. Okay, hang on one sec. I'm so sorry I don't have the right browser for this. Oh wait, I'm gonna try the Firefox Dev Edition, see what happens. Okay, dragging this over. Okay. Nope. Now you're getting these. Stop it. Get that URL. Like super difficult too. Oh, but it's not variable though. It's not changing, right? So oh no, so that's Chrome. So down here you see the variable version. Up here you see the color version, but you don't see them together. And in certain situations, this can happen. I promise you. I feel so. But yeah. Oh, did I turn on the flag for? I might not have. I don't. Do you want me to sit? Yeah. Go check. Okay, on his website, he shows you which browser it is. It works. It's a thing. This is like super. Yeah, it's a weird intersection of things. Oh my God, his eyes are creeping me out. This is using CLLR, which I believe is maybe why you're not seeing the color version in, because Chrome now supports SVG. I can't keep track of what's going on. Do you remember? Oh, no. Okay, that's okay. Anyway, thank you for letting me show that. That's lovely. Hi. Yeah, okay. Hi.
Could you have an access that actually modifies the color? Like maybe you want to have darker colors, lighter colors, and set like the base color, and maybe you want to have an access that modifies the contrast between the lighter and the darker versions.
That's a complicated question because there are different kinds of color fonts. So
The SVG one?
So there's the SVG one, but variable data, to my knowledge, cannot control an embedded SVG. So the answer is, can it? Yes. SVG fonts can use CPAL. See, I've only used color and see the color, there's a table called color and CPAL. So they're just different approaches to the same problem. It's like, do you include an image inside? Do you have the black version and then a different color version and you lay them on top of each other? Like there are different ways to achieve this goal. And depending on that way, it is possible. Maybe in theory, I haven't tested that, like SVG and CPAL. That's naturally one of the two approaches I'm mixing them, which I haven't done. I did release a color font called, now that I'm just URLing it, I'm going to show you, Bungee. So this, okay, cool. So this is a font for, it's actually based on a sign where I used to live in Indian Square in Cambridge. This is so it was inspired by that sign. Well, yeah, a liquor store sign. I was like, oh, vertical fonts, cool, color fonts, cool. So I put this together. So yeah, you can have these different layers. This is open source. You can download it and play with it. But I do not have the. And oh, I'll show you. Here is an example of the you can actually in text edit type in color. Like if you look up top, black is currently selected as a text color, but you're typing in multicolor. There should be an inline in there. You might see it exactly. Anyway, color fonts are exciting. They got a separate technology, but in the same font, so you can mess with stuff.
Does the complexity or the efficiency tend to go up or down with the complexity of the font? Like I was doing some elaborate Gothic font.
Yeah.
Would I tend to get more space saving, less space saving, comparable?
Theoretically, the more points you have, the more complex the outline, the larger the font. With the variable font, the savings really comes from what instances of it you're using. So that's going to be a bigger difference, like sans versus serif. Theoretically, yeah, the serif is going to have more points, right? Because you have to plot that point, and then there are only points for the serifs. But practically, I don't think that's going to be the big determining factor of class. And what ends up happening, this is kind of a type design story that gets passed around. Matthew Carter, Australian, the Canterbury actually, designed this font called Charter. And this was back in the 90s, where actually fonts were actually big, whereas today, let's be honest. And he was like, I'm going to make this serif font and make it super efficient, right? So instead of having these nice bracketed serifs with these curves, because curve data is more expensive than straight data, he designed this gorgeous font so that it has these straight lines. And then he presented this font to his colleagues at Bitstream, which is where he worked designing Bitstream. I think it's right. I hope I'm telling the story right. And they were like, actually, we solved that problem in the code, and now fonts can be bigger by a factor of 10. And so so I feel like whenever you try to make it constrain a font's design based on the file size constraints are going to go away so fast that that's not going to make the big difference. Of course, you could surely find an example to prove it wrong. Coming off another? Oh, hi. No. I'm having fun. I hope you're having fun.
Since you're big on licensing issues,
yes.
Can you think of what are the implications of taking a font that's commercially available, but it's not available as variable font, but you want to use it in a variable way, but you convert it to Word to add that variation?
Good question. Sorry.
What are the implications of that for licensing?
The implications are most foundry licenses will have a clause on modifications. And in my foundry license, I allow modifications. So you could, I'm pretty sure, do that, and it would be totally within the terms of the license. I would still own that font, right? So if you went and tried to sell that variable font, I would not do that. But modifications for your own use, governed under the same terms of the license, I allow. A lot of foundries don't allow it, mainly because what ends up happening is somebody fusses with the font, it gets installed this corporation's machine, and then it goes to that place and that place and that place, and then 5 years later, people are having this support issue. Hey, why won't my font work? And then they come back to the foundry and it's like, hey, my font's broken. And it's like, actually, you broke it 5 years ago. So I mean, that would be a reason not to allow modification, but that's usually stated in the license. Generally, I would say it would be easier to hire the foundry to do it, because honestly, it's such a pain in the butt, right? At least right now, that I don't know if you want to do it yourself.
Just a follow on with that, OpenType and Adobe and many others, I'm sure, are actually working on their own tooling now to convert their existing library. I mean, it's not going to be without pain, but it is something where within the next 6 months or so, you're going to start to see a lot more of like that big catalog of like the big name typefaces that are going to start to become available. It won't be a question of needing to make it yourself.
I mean, that's actually another kind of tricky thing about variable fonts is that I don't know if people here like follow the new font releases, font Twitter. It's fun. I don't do that. No, I do encourage you to follow new font releases, but Twitter, whatever. What this does though is variable fonts, because everyone's going to be able to now reissue their old fonts as variable fonts. There's going to be a lot of like signal noise ratio problems where it's like, you're going to have to kind of distinguish between like, hey, I converted my old boring font into a new boring variable font, versus like, hey, I'm like trying to really take this format and do something interesting and new with it. Like, check out this font. And there's a bit of unevenness right now with different people have different map pieces, can use different audiences. I mean, I know for me it's very hard for me to get a design like fit. This is like super odd and weird in front of kind of like your audiences that are getting stuff from Google Fonts, right? Like it's hard for me to do that. So I would encourage you to when you see new font releases to actually see like is there value in this thing? It's just because it's variable font doesn't mean it has value. It has to actually like work good and fill a need and do a job of design. But I'm here. You can come up to me too. Thank you everyone so much. You've been awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to hang around for a little while longer. So this is my last Boston CSS before I travel abroad for a year, and so we're going to wrap down like how often we meet, probably around every 2 to 3 months instead of every month. But anyways, does anyone have announcements to make? Maybe an event that's coming up or anything of the like? Yes.
Hi, I run the Boston Code Pen meetup. This is November 8th. We are running a rehash on CSS Grid, which is discussed. It's really cool. We're going to basically be quick learning on kind of the ins and outs and basics, and then working through some tutorials and kind of happening this news. And we'd love to have you there. Meetup, Code Pen Boston. Let's see you then.
Next Wednesday.
Yeah, next Wednesday.
I can't take that canteen.
I'm really good at this.
Hi, well, I'm Jason. I'm going to be giving a talk about variable fonts and implementing them and actually showing a demo of them in Google as part of your content management process at Union Google Camp on the 18th in Worcester. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And if anyone's interested in learning about theming Drupal 8, I'm going to be doing a workshop for Drupal 4 as well. There's tickets available at midnight.
Anybody else? All right, so we have a few more drinks left and pizza, and we'll all hang around for a while longer. Thank you. Thank you.
It's okay.
in that order. In fact, like,
Like my mouth was open. Well, I
Sorry, we're like broadcasting on YouTube. I'm thinking, okay, Java update.